I got a couple
Mhm.
things, but
Okay.
let's let you lead today. I do a
Okay.
lot of jumping off and yapping.
Yep. Yeah. Yapping. Everybody, welcome back. We're here. We're talking with Zach, and he's in scenic, sunny Ohio, for
It
a
is sunny.
wedding, and
It's
we
hot as
decided to
shit
go
here,
ahead and get one of
actually.
these squeezed in
It's
for
like
you guys.
90
So
degrees.
yeah, if it looks different, it's not he didn't move a spot in his basement. He's actually in a completely different state. Um,
Yeah, I'm
so
standing in a baby's nursery right
I
now.
think it's the best backdrop you've had. I mean, look at me
It
in my
is.
shoes. Come on, get on board.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So I have a question for you. Because we work with a lot of like high school age, middle school and high school age guys and gals, right? I would argue that it seems that's the big part is it seems that the way the education system has gone is that it's become kind of like a herding, and you're just like pushing people through the system, just getting them to pass, getting them out the door. Doesn't really matter. Like we're kind of holding hands. That's at least sometimes what the perception is, at least from our end, when people tell us, like when kids tell us that they can retake tests all the time and they can get points back and they can do this and they can do that. Um, that's that's kind of how it feels from our end. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, 100% agree. Especially like it seems to me like public school and private school are getting more and more and more different. When we were in high school, public and private school were like a little bit different. Maybe the religious aspect and things like that, but more or less kind of the same, like structure, same experience. And now the high school kids, it's like if you go to a public school, you kind of have one experience. And if you go to a private school, it's like, yeah, we actually do school. And there's a lot of the public school kids
Yeah, we
that
actually have to do school.
they say things, and I'm like, wait, what? Like it kind of feels like in some aspects they've mailed it in.
Yeah. So I was at breakfast with one of our good friends, and she just started dating a guy who is a high school teacher. Now
That's right.
that was 100% that was 100% like my perception. I was like, oh yeah, they phoned it in 100%. So then I was like, it was one of the first things I asked him about. I was like, okay. So I go, his name's Jack. I go, Jack, explain. I was like, just explain to me. I was like, I'm going to try to remove all of my bias. I was like, explain to me why it feels like the school has become just a continuum or a hallway to just walk kids down. And he brought up a very good point. I was pretty impressed because he works. He's at a St. Paul school, so not like not the best school in the state, but not the worst. Basically, he shot it to me like this. He goes, "Okay, so let's say Freddie knows that he's like 90% of the kids in school are going to pass. He's like they're going to pass because it's high school. High school's not that difficult anyway. We're going to get them in. We're going to get them to like follow rules. We're going to help them learn rubrics and learn problem solving. He's a math teacher." And then he goes, "Well, think about it this way. If little Freddie is a quarter of the way through the semester and he has a 0% in the class, he's just going to pack it up and he's not going to try at all. Versus if we can get him to 50%, then maybe he can be like, okay, well, maybe I can get 60% and actually pass this thing." I mean, so he was like, the premise of what we have is that we have a lot of these young people in society that don't have a lot of outlets where they succeed. And he's like, we're trying to figure out a way to give them some motivation to take the next step and actually try a little bit. Now
Hmm.
he said there's a lot of them. There's a lot of kids that know that they're not going to go to college. Like there's just like the guys when we went to school, there were definitely dudes that were like, oh yeah, I'm not going to college. And he's like, my job is just to make sure that they follow the rules, get the job done, move them along, right? But then he said there are some kids that just underachieve because they have never succeeded in anything. And if we can create an environment where they can experience at least a little bit of success, then it might lead to them propagating and take the steps forward. And now, like I said, his name's Jack, so he's a male, right? There aren't that many male teachers, so he's a lot of
Yeah.
times he's kind of the first person to set expectations for these young people in their class, right? That
Yeah.
is a male, and especially in the education system. And I thought that was that really helped me understand at least my feelings on what public schooling is kind of like and how it is, because that makes a ton of sense. Like if a kid comes into one of our sessions and goes and can't squat at all, he cannot achieve a squat period. He's going to pack it in and go home because he's not going to want to do it. Versus if we
Yeah.
can find a way to have him experience some success and have fun with his buddies, then he's going to start to try harder and he might break out of the quagmire that is like holding him back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's cool that you got a chance to talk to him about that. This is a small world thing. I went to high school with this guy ever since we were kids. Like he's a really intelligent person. He's a super level-headed guy. So it's interesting to hear his kind of perspective on this from a professional standpoint. I got two thoughts on this. Like, first of all, I think it's a reality of the world, not just school, but life in general, that you are always, and this is a bit of a cynical way to frame it, but you are always going to be kind of slave to the bottom quartile, right? Like the worst 25% of whatever society that you're a part of is going to determine a lot of what goes on, right? A lot of the laws that we have in place, a lot of the red tape and bureaucracy that you have in order to get certain things like driver's licenses and so on is just because there is that bottom 25% of people that kind of can't be trusted with this responsibility, and so they have to have these like barriers to entry, right? And the schooling system is very much that way as well, where if you're somebody who's really gifted in a certain subject, they have sometimes they have avenues for you, but oftentimes like the policies, the grades, like you graduate with the same diploma as the guy who didn't really put in that much effort, and that's the frustration of people where they're like they have this perspective where it's like they're just moving people through, and it's like, but
Mm-hmm.
I graduate with this diploma and I got my grade point average or whatever, but nobody asks about that. And then this guy, even in college, I don't know what your college experience was like, but shit, man, my college, I had college baseball teammates that could read at like an elementary school level. Like and they got the same bachelor's degree I did, right? And you wonder why everybody has to go to grad school now. Like, so, that's kind of the fact of life, is that that's just how it's going to go. And I think the sooner you accept that, the less you're going to be kicking and screaming. But also, I think like one of the things that would be helpful in this scenario is like, he's kind of talking about changing people's relationship with succeeding. I think, you know, in my own personal experience of working with kids, like changing your relationship with failure is something that is really valuable. And I'm not so sure that school does a good job of that in general. Like if you fail, it's like you didn't prepare, you didn't study, you are a failure. You suck. Like when I get a kid in there, let's use your example, and he just literally cannot squat. Something that I like to say, this line to kids is like, you came here to fail. That's what you showed up here to do. You showed up here to be bad at this. You didn't come here to succeed. You didn't come here to be good at this right away. You got in the car and came here and walked through that door to fail. That's what you are here to do, to suffer, to struggle, and to fail. And eventually, you will improve incrementally, right? But I think that, like, you take a math test, for example, and you get a 48%, and it's like black mark, bad. I think maybe we should do a better job from a young age of kids in the education system of reframing that as like you have opportunity now, like you've got these like opportunities to succeed now. You've got opportunities for growth, opportunities for learning, and you're just like, but if you're just labeling, you're just spending too much time labeling, then it's not really conducive to building that confidence that you're kind of talking about.
I 100% agree. And that's where it's like that him putting it in the sense that he's the first role model to like create parameters for somebody, right? So it's like the success and failure is now dictated upon him, right? And then the hard part is that's the other part I agree about the way that the system of schooling is that it's a failure, right? So it's like under a certain mark, you didn't get anything, but it's like really you did some of them right. Like
Hmm.
you got some of it right. You just didn't get enough to get past a certain number. And it's like if okay, so it's the I had this example with I have an intern right now at the clinic, and she is inexperienced because she's an intern. Like she just hasn't had a lot of reps doing what she's doing, right? And she goes and puts a guy in a position right after he had labrum surgery, and I was like, hey, don't do that. And she goes, well, I made a whoopsie, and I was like, no, you didn't. I was like, you just are learning. I was like, you didn't do anything wrong. You just are learning. I was like, this is the process of learning. You're good. This is there's I it's the same thing when we get guys in for throwing. It's the same thing. You're going to you're going to fail. Like 90% of life is failure realistically. And I agree with you in the fact that like in the way that we train or in the way that we teach, it's too black and white at the bottom of it, right? Versus it being like, okay, so you got 30% of them right. Okay, what parts of these did you do well? Like, what
Hmm.
are the things that you did well here? Okay, great, you did these things well. Can you do more of that? Could you do more things well? Like, could you do this
Yeah.
again and concentrate a little harder, maybe, and then we might get the result we want. But yeah, the distinction of that 50% is like the cutoff or whatever the cutoff is, right? Is the hard part because it is truly you did or didn't pass, which is hard to conceptualize. Like the
Yeah.
black and white of right of the black and white of like yes I did it and no I didn't do it. It is not applicable in most things in life, right? Like in like experiences in life and in sport especially. There's like oh, I didn't get a hit, but you got to sacrifice fly, so you scored the run. Yeah, you didn't
Yeah.
succeed in getting a hit, but you succeeded in doing a part of the job to create the run, right? It's the same thing in like business. Oh, we didn't grow
Yeah.
to be $100 million in the first year, but we grew $1 million. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's it's a net positive still. Like I agree, but it's I could see how it would be very difficult with how the structure is created to get young individuals who who haven't experienced success but have experienced a lot of failure and feel like their failure bucket is like the one that they live in, right? And it's just you're feeding into that, you're funneling more stuff into
Yeah.
that failure bucket, right? And it's one of those things that it's an enigma. It's not solvable in the current structure that we have, right? It's just not. You
Yeah.
can't like what do you do? What do you do? You make a 1% is you get 1% and then you have to accumulate a total percentage of those percent points and then you still have to score it. So like,
Yeah, the
I don't know.
system itself is kind of flawed for that. Like that, I was just thinking that like you kind of have to strip it down to its fundamentals because like it's a cultural issue as much as anything because the why you're even there is sort of misdefined, right? I mean, how many kids do we know who are even smart kids and they just don't put in that much effort because they know they can either coast, they can cheat their way through, they can chat GPT everything or whatever it is. And it's like, but it's misdefining the whole reason you're there because I mean, so many people treat, especially public school, it's like glorified daycare, it's childcare. You just have to kind of check this box. You have to graduate high school so you can like be a person in the world. And people are like, well, as long as I graduate, I'm good, right? And nobody really acts like you're there to learn, right? You might hear a teacher say that every now and then, but you're kind of like, no, I'm not. And, if you're actually there to learn something, then you can redefine like success and failure, right? Like that there's so much in life that builds frustration for people just on a misaligned definition of what um, succeeding and failing is. Like if you have, I say this in baseball all the time, the game of failure thing. I'm like, game of failure, bullshit, total bogus. They're like, oh, if you succeed 3 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. No, dude. If you succeed 3 out of 10 times, you stink. You're cut from the team because what you've done is you've misdefined what succeeding is. Succeeding is not getting a hit. Like that doesn't make any sense. You can't control that, right? If you're a hitter and your plate approach is, I hope I get a hit, you're not going to be very good at the game. Your goal is to hit the ball really hard that direction, right? And if you can
Mhm.
consistently barrel
Yep.
balls, then they'll fall 3 out of 10 times. An element of luck there, like so your goal is to succeed like 7 out of 10 times or higher, right? And then you can't control whether or not that you get the lucky part, you know and if we could figure out a way to do that kind of reframing for kids entering into school in like kindergarten and first grade, then it would be probably better. I mean,
Yeah.
there's more options kind of popping up on the market. I think that this is something that in our lifetime we'll see kind of really drastically change in the United States. Is I don't think public school is going to go away, but I think that it was always kind of like public school or private school, and private school was like for rich kids or super religious kids, and it's very expensive, 20, 30 or more thousand per year tuition. But there's more things that are kind of popping up. There's like pseudo homeschooling. Have you ever heard of micro schools? So there's like these
Yep.
these families getting together doing homeschooling with like 8 to 10 kids, and it's like a small school, they go and they do this paperwork to get accredited or whatever. Um, there's also that startup Alpha School. Have you seen Alpha School?
I haven't. No.
Alpha School is kind of an interesting thing because it's like a tech company. They're doing a lot of AI with it, where it's like they've got the curriculum is built with AI, and they're like on a tablet for like their school day. But the whole value prop is that like kids are at school for way less time. So it isn't the slog of them like sitting in a classroom all day, right? Because we all kind of know like a 7-year-old needs to be like up and around and running around, right? And so they have these like cohorts of kids and they do their little activities and they figured out a better way to gamify learning and get them excited about learning, and then they have a couple hours of that, and then they're out in and then there's like a class where it's like wilderness walking, and then they're like running around in the woods, right? And they're able to kind of get what they believe to be a better education experience. It's getting pretty popular, and they only have it, I think, in a couple of cities. Um, like Austin, Texas, or I don't know exactly. I'd have to double check, but I was looking into that because I heard about it on a different podcast recently, and I was like, this is interesting because I think, you're going to see more of this type of thing in our life where there's more optionality, more access to private or different types of education structures for families, because I think a lot of people kind of like feel like, yeah, this is fine, but it's like kind of glorified daycare. And if I want something more for my kid, or my kid wants something more or different, like you kind of didn't have those options. And there's going to be kind of like
Mhm.
people coming in and occupying spaces in the market for that kind of thing. uh we've already seen, like, we know that thing like IMG Academy can be successful. There's a school in Minnesota called Shattuck, where it's like a sports private school. It's, people go there to play hockey. um there's some middle schools around us that are kind of like the sports focused middle schools, and they do the middle school because then they don't have to worry about graduating kids and meeting state requirements. But it's like, it's one of those things where it's kind of, it's a delicate balance though, because at least from talking to the other kids that we train and coach, the kids that go to that sports middle school, everybody thinks they're dumb, you know? And
Yeah.
that's probably not your best reputation.
That's true.
So it's like, I
I
don't know,
mean,
man.
we talk about this a lot with our high school guys. I mean, I even had a conversation about this with one of our softball gals the other day. She's like, oh, I was in class for 9 hours today. And I was like, ew. And I looked at her mom and I said, who works for 9 hours straight? I was like, there are very few
Yeah.
people that are actually working for 9 hours straight. So I think if you even worked like a labor job where you had like a 12 or a 15-hour day, you're not actually like confined to an area for that amount of time. Like you're working, but you're doing a lot of different stuff. Like, it's just the structure. I agree. I get it though, because it's like it's a built-in daycare for because parents have jobs. So like if a kid couldn't go to school, what do you do with the kid? There are a lot of variables that go into it. That's a whole nother can of worms. That's way above our pay grade. Let's be honest. We can't solve
Yeah.
that. But for us, it's the premise is that there needs to be reform, and there already is, but there need to be ways that people can find their fit. Have you ever seen that kid on, I don't know if he's on the TikToks or on Instagram, but his name is I think his name's Bud or something like that, and it's this little 8-year-old, and his dad brings him to work every day with him, and he does cement. So the kid's like working on a cement
No,
crew all
that
day,
kicks
and
ass. No.
he hammers away, like he does full framing. Like a kid can do everything, right? Realistically, the kid's gonna be able to, like, if he's happy doing that, he'll never have to go to school.
Yeah.
Like he won't have to. Like you could learn how to read. It's not hard to learn how to read. You could get on the Googler and go how to learn how to read. And there's 8 million things on how to learn how to read, right? So the kid can learn how to read. I guarantee he can do math because he can use a measuring tape. I've seen it.
Yeah.
He can calculate the square of something if it's off, or how to like brace it. So pretty good at problem solving. I mean, and he was like talking about how many cubic feet, or it was like how many bags per cubic foot, depending upon depth. And he was just like calculating his brain. I was like, this kid's gonna be fine. He's like
And
nine,
that's how,
10, something like
yeah.
that.
that's how real
Yeah.
learning gets done, you know? Like I when I
Hmm.
was a little kid, that my first introduction to learning how to do math was playing board games with my mom. You know,
Yeah.
Monopoly was how I learned how to do basic arithmetic, making change in Monopoly or like doing that. Like um that was probably more productive learning than anything I could have done, right? Just like that kid learning how to calculate, like it's
100%.
real. It's in front of him, right? When you're learning math in the math class setting, it doesn't feel as real because it's just like on your piece of paper and it's like, why do I have to do this? I want to go lay cement, right? I want to go dig a hole, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm digging a hole
Yeah.
and my dad's like, how deep is your hole? Why don't you measure it? And it's like, oh, well, now I'm learning numbers and math, like, but let me dig the damn hole, you know, and you don't get to do that in that setting. So I don't know, man. I mean, I agree. It's uh it's a really interesting thing and kind of observing it from like the no skin in the game right now, right? Being that I don't have a kid who's going to school and I'm not a teacher, but I interact with kids. So I'm like, I don't have any actual skin in the game, but I'm like close to it all the time. It it makes me like have opinions, but then I'm like, well, I don't really get to have an opinion yet. Yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know
I
what I'll
thought the same
do,
thing
you
when I was
know, like
talking to Jack
depending it
about
depends a
that.
lot on where I live, you know. But
Hmm.
when someday when my
Hmm.
kid is going to
I
school,
was, I was,
like,
but it was like I was talking to Jack about that. I was like, I'm asking you this, but I also like I'm just curious. I was like, I just want to know. I was like, I don't.
yeah.
I was so. But yeah, man, that was my thing. I thought that was pretty cool the way that he was like, well, we're trying, and I was like, that makes sense. I was like, you're doing the best you can with the parameters you've been set inside of. So I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think anybody's mailed it in. In fact, if anybody's mailed it in, it's the
No.
kids have mailed it in, you know. But it seems
Yes.
like the end result, you're like somebody's mailing it in here, you know. But I think, you know, the educators are definitely they're doing what they can, you know.
100%.
Um,
Mhm.
all right, I got something else for you. Um, I have a take that I need to walk back. So I'm on record as like openly scoffing at fitness wearables and the neuroticism that comes along with them. People are like, you know, Zach, I'm surprised you don't have a Whoop or an Aura Ring or whatever. I'm like, I don't need the thing to tell me I slept like shit. I'm aware. I can feel it. You know, like that was kind of always my take. So, but I had like long story short, I stumbled into like a coupon with like 3 free months on Whoop, and I was like, I'll give it a try. You know, we'll see, right? So I got a Whoop. I got it on right now. You know, it's actually dead. Funny enough, like so, I'm walking this take about halfway back, because there's a big but here. So first of all, got it. I do like it. So that's the walk back of the take. I like it. It's useful as far as like kind of confirming or denying some things where it's like, you know, in terms of my activity level or my stress or my strain in a given day, it's like, man, like you kind of tell yourself a story because you're feeling a little tired and then you kind of dig yourself this mental hole and then you look and your actual physical metrics are it's like the inverse, right? Where it's like you know, your stress level according to your heart rate data is not that bad. Or you know, your sleep, your HRV, you know, you're probably all right, man. I'm like, all right, so, you know, I kind of knock the rest off, get it going, have a decent training session that day. I'm like, all right, you know. And then of course sometimes the inverse. I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good, and then I look and it's like you actually feel like shit, and I'm like, maybe I feel like shit. So that's kind of the downside, you know. Like I sometimes you think you feel good, and sometimes it tells you you don't, and then I'm like, I actually feel bad. But I like having access to that data. I also like the social aspect. I made a little group and I added a bunch of the athletes that we work with to it who also have whoops. And then I can go and look and say, hey, 5 hours of sleep? Are you fucking kidding me, dude? You know? And their like
Hold on a
readiness
second.
score, their
Hold on a
sleep
second.
score
You
is
got to walk.
awful.
Hold on. You got to go.
Did I lose my
Hold on.
connection
We
for a
got to go
second
back
there?
to like, we got to back it up. Yep. We got to back it up. We got to back it up. We got to go back to
All right.
like, okay, so you said, take me back to the part where you're like, okay, I'm telling myself a story. I'm convinced I don't feel good. And then your watch says that you do. So you knock the rust off and you get it
All right.
going.
All right.
Start there.
We're going to lean on Levi to help us edit that out. So
Hmm.
like sometimes I'm like, yeah, I feel pretty good, right? And then it's like you actually feel bad, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I feel bad. But then sometimes it's the inverse. Maybe I'm telling myself I feel bad, and then it's like you're fine, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm probably fine, right? And then there's this social aspect, right, where I can add like friends to it, and you can see their scores, right? And I can go on there and I can look at Carl Sheeby, and I can go, Carl, are you kidding me right now with this? you, you went to bed. This says you went to bed at 3 a.m. And he's like, I was watching TikToks. Sorry. So that's kind of fun, right? I can like keep track of the guys, right? But then I made a mistake.
Hmm.
Earlier this summer, I went up north and I was at a cabin with some friends and had a few adult beverages, and I made the mistake of leaving my Whoop on, and I got like three text messages from the college aged kids, and they were like, "Nice recovery score. What are you getting up to?" Like my recovery score was like 4%, and I was like, "Shit, they're on to me, right? It's going both ways." But with that being said, so like I'm gonna keep it, I think, right? But with that being said, like I let it die. Like it's not as important as I think some people make it out to be. And I'll stay on that take where it's like it's a slippery slope into getting like really neurotic, where you're like you wake up and the first thing you check is your sleep score, and you're like, how did I sleep? Right? And it's still a little bit flawed. So here's my example. So your readiness is a multi-factor thing. So the primary data point that like a Whoop will use is HRV. Now, HRV is pretty indicative of like your neurological uh, readiness status, your cardiovascular readiness, right? But one of the other things that's out there that people use as like a readiness score is that grip test that we do for our throwers. And that's indicative of like this kind of nebulous thing called neural drive, right? Which is essentially like if you think of your nervous system's output and how much it can activate motor units and like ramp up force production, almost think of it as like voltage or rather maybe amperage. I don't know. I'm not an electrician. Don't get on me about that. But and essentially, how much electricity can it put out, right? So I caught a cold earlier this week and I wasn't feeling well at all. I was at work and I was like, I shouldn't have even come in today. I'm legit sick. My Whoop score was like green. It was like 78% readiness, and my sleep score was like 86%, which is like none of those are like insanely perfect or optimal, but it was like in the quote unquote green, and it's like you can train hard today. I gripped that thing. For reference, my best that I've ever gotten is 190. My average that I'll get on like a given day is like high 170s, low 180s, right? I gripped that shit as hard as I could, and I was 148.
Yep.
That is not a 76% readiness score. I'm a corpse. I'm a walking dead body, right? I did not lift that day, and I wasn't planning on it anyway. But I was like, that was confirmed. I am not touching a weight today. Like, no way, dude. I do not have it. And so it's still an incomplete picture. No matter what you do, I think that you kind of have to still stay in tune with your body. And that's most people know who Andy Galpin is. He published a book a while back, and it was called Unplugged. And the gist of this was like in a world full of wearables, like you still need to have attunement with your own physiology. Like you need to know how to recognize things on your own without the data from the wearables, even though the wearables are really useful and all that, right? But it's still a worthwhile endeavor for companies like this to exist, because eventually we're going to get better and better and better and better, and you might have the complete picture, right? So that you need to have that pursuit. Um, Look this up. Go to choosemuse.com. I'm curious if you've seen this. I bet you haven't, because I hadn't till recently. This is not an
Brain
ad, by
sensing
the way.
headband.
Yeah. So there's a technology that
Whoa.
exists called EEG. Okay. This is for the listener. I think you probably know about EEG. So you can, up
I
until
do.
recently, you would have to go to a lab and they would put this like space age looking helmet on you. And it has electrodes that would make contact with your skin on your head, and it can sense your brain waves, right? And there's different types, because our brain and our nervous system runs essentially on electricity, right? And so there's different electrical fingerprints and signatures that they can recognize that are different types of brain waves, different types of brain functions. And you used to have this like really high level lab grade technology. And there's this company called Muse, and they have come out with a headband, a consumer grade. It's the data they claim is clinical grade. They're actually using Muse now in studies because it's so much more accessible than those big helmets. And so there's a lot of clinical trials and
Mhm.
studies being run that are actually using this instead. So the data validity is very, very high on this, but it's a consumer product and it's like $500 is all, right? And it's a headband that you put
Yeah.
on and
I
it
mean,
measures your brain waves. And so this is perfectly aligned with I have this take I have this prediction that with all the heart rate and the wearables and everything, like the brain is the next frontier. Like I've predicted like brain gyms, like people are going to be going and training their brain. This is like a very clear first step. People are going to be tracking their nervous system and their brain waves instead of just their heart rate and their steps and everything else. I think it's sweet.
yeah,
I'm super stoked about
dude,
this.
it's a cool. I mean, especially so like I read just a little blurb, right? So the beefed up one, it like literally it said digital sleeping pills. So that's so sick. So it can literally measure like when you're optimal to sleep and be like, okay, go to bed.
Yeah.
Instead of like if you're a bad sleeper, wasting your time rolling around, like before you go to sleep. Like think if
Yeah.
you had that on, like you're winding down at the end of the night, you put on your little deal, and you're not a good sleeper, but then you go, oh wait, I have my thing who's going to help me sleep. This goes. We always end up tying this back in, but it's like this is the setting the expectation, right? Like having the idea of like, oh, I'm going to succeed at sleep because I have my Delio on, right? And then boom, you're sitting there, you're hanging out with your wife, and then it goes, hey Alex, it's time for you to go to sleep. Go get in bed. Great. Okay, I'm going to bed. Like that is the idea of that to cut down that like anxiety drive, like going into bed for people who have like who do bad sleep, like you, bad sleeper, like to have something that helps you like understand that would be it's there's so much cool shit that's coming out, man. Think how much has happened since we graduated college.
Crazy.
It's insane.
Only
It's
only what, eight,
freaking
nine
nuts.
years of technology and
Yeah.
it's accelerating.
Speak for yourself. That's like decade for me, but yeah, it's crazy. It's like it's an X2, it's an X2 slope. It's just like every single day there's something more, and it's incredible. We're so lucky to be alive during that. Like it sucks to be alive during this time sometimes, but we're so lucky to be alive during this time because we have all these things that we get access to, you know. So yeah, I dig it.
What a time.
Freaking dig it.
What do you think,
That
man?
was
Was
good.
that the pod?
Little quickie.
All right. Little
Bag
quickie.
it. All right.
All right.
Until next
See
time,
ya.
enjoy your wedding. Bye.